We looking at the world through our 2020 lens. We're not looking at the world through our 1940 lens. We're not looking at the world through our 1960 lens where we saying, bro, we just want to be treated as human beings. So we can look through the world and say, I would have stayed integrated, I segregated, we ain't need it. Yeah, we looking at that through his lens. We ain't looking at it through the lens where I just seen my best friend get lynched. Or me and my partner in a car and we can't, these white Caucasian men did this. We ain't looking at it through the lens where we saw a young boy by the name of Emmett Till get beat up like that and tied to a 18-wheeler tire and at the bottom of a river. We ain't looking at it through that lens. We ain't looking at it through a lens where we walking through something, we see black men hanging from a tree, which they just recently saw, and what they. We ain't looking at it through that lens. We ain't looking at it through the lens where we got a Fred Hampton and a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X, and we see all of them get killed or hear about all of them getting assassinated. We not looking at it through that lens. We looking at it through this privileged ass 2025 lens where we can get on our phone and ask ChatGPT these questions and get on a TV and get on Instagram and make comments and have opinions about that don't even matter. And tear each other down about that don't even matter. And you can say, oh, chap, you trying to be like Martin Luther King. No, I'm trying to be Wall Street Travel. What I am saying is we make a lot of opinion about shit that we privileged for. We don't even get to do this if they don't struggle the way they struggle. Fannie Lou Hamer, man, we gotta love her. There's blood on that flag. I love hearing her say that. There's blood on that flag. Fannie Lou Hamer was fearless civil rights leader who turned personal pain into national power. Born in Mississippi in 1917, she rose from sharecropping to challenging America's racial injustice. After being beaten for trying to vote, she co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and shook the 1964 Democratic Convention with her televised testimony. She later launched the Freedom Forum Corporation to fight for poverty and empowering black families economically. Her economic words, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, became a rally cry for liberation. Hamer's legacy lives on as a symbol of grassroots power, dignity, and resistance. Let's go.
Women have the vote, at least on paper.
The amendment passes and it's ratified. It doesn't mean that black women, yay, we can vote. No, now you're under the same restrictions that black men were under after the Reconstruction period.
It's an incomplete victory.
Native Americans have to wait 4 more years to even be considered citizens. Chinese immigrants won't achieve full rights until the 1940s.
People want to prohibit people from having free and unencumbered access because that means that power and resources will then be redistributed. And then who will that favor? And so there's this fear that's behind all of this.
In the segregated South, an organized effort keeps black citizens from the ballot box.
Residency requirements, poll taxes, literacy requirements.
The very real threat of violence, of lynching, were visited upon communities who did try to exercise the right to vote, which was why there are vast communities where people didn't even attempt to try to vote.
One woman brings the struggle to the national stage. Fannie Lou Hamer was born the last of 20 children to a family of Mississippi sharecroppers.
Growing up in the Mississippi Delta, she thinks, well, voting could help change my economic circumstances, and so I am going to try and go and register to vote.
She isn't allowed to register. Just for attempting it, she is fired from her job of 18 years and put out of her home. But she persists, becoming a voter and an activist.
The bus that she's in gets stopped, and all of the people who are with her who are trying to register to vote, they are removed from the bus.
Once again, women asking for their democratic rights are thrown in jail.
3 white men came to my cell. One of these men was State Highway Patrol. He said, we're going to make you wish you was dead.
She is physically assaulted to the point that assault has lifelong effects on her.
This time, there is no public outcry. President Johnson pays no attention. But Hamer does not back down. Instead, she launches a campaign for the U.S. Senate. Though the longest of long shots in a district where only 5% of African Americans are registered to vote, she uses the platform to raise her voice.
We are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
In 1964, Hamer speaks at the National Democratic Party convention in Atlantic City.
We want to register to become first-class citizens. And if the freedom...
She told the story of what was happening to Black people in their quest for their natural-born right to vote.
Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America?
She used her platform to tell a story that I don't think many people in the nation knew. She recognized that if the South was going to change, it was going to change at the hands of people like her.
1 year later, Congress passes a law to enforce the 19th and 15th Amendments, the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
As much as we want the story of voting rights, not just for women, but for everyone in the United States, to be a forward trajectory, there are always new barriers that people find ways to put up.
I just want y'all to understand something, y'all. This is real talk. We may think it's far away, but 1965 ain't that far away. We may think it's far away. I was looking at the thing from this weekend, and like my partner mama is Miss Ruby Bridges, right? The first little girl to be integrated in Black schools in New Orleans. She's still alive. Huh? No, I thought I said Black girl in New Orleans. Yeah, she was the first Black kid to integrate schools, right? She's still alive in New Orleans. Ruby Bridges. Looking good. Second, the dude, I forgot his name, the famous picture of the whites only water fountain, still alive. So we still have people that's in the late 50s, 60s, 70s that are still here that went through this. I think the biggest thing of our generation right now is, in like Ashan's generation, and I'm not saying this as a bad thing, I'm just saying that we gotta find a way to make this right. There's gonna be a point in life where they have no connection to who these people are. They're gonna have no connection to who a Fannie Lou Hamer is, who even a Malcolm X is, who a W.B. Du Bois, a Frederick Douglass. There'll be a moment where they won't know who these people are. And that's one of the most catastrophic things that can ever happen to our culture, when we forget what it took for us to get where we are now. When we forget what it took that a Black man like myself, you wasn't able to buy the commercial real estate. Where a Black man or a Black woman like some of you that's looking at this, you wasn't able to invest in the stock market or buy real estate or vote. Imagine getting beat up because you wanted to vote. And we can have all these things in our head where we say, we should have stayed this, and we should have stayed segregated. We can say all that because we're looking at the world through our 2020 lens. We're looking at the world through our 2020 lens. We're not looking at the world through our 1940 lens. We're not looking at the world through our 1960 lens where we saying, bro, we just want to be treated as human beings. So we can look through the world and say, I would have stayed integrated, I segregated, we ain't need it. Yeah, we looking at that through his lens. We ain't looking at it through the lens where I just seen my best friend get lynched. Or me and my partner in the car, and we can't, these white Caucasian men did this. We ain't looking at it through the lens where we saw a young boy by the name of Emmett Till get beat up like that and tied to a 18-wheeler tire and at the bottom of a river. We ain't looking at it through that lens. We ain't looking at it through a lens where we walking through something, we see black men hanging from a tree, which they just recently saw, and with their genitals cut off though. We ain't looking at it through that lens. We ain't looking at it through the lens where we got a Fred Hampton and a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X, and we see all of them get killed or hear about all of them getting assassinated. We not looking at it through that lens. We looking at it through this privileged ass 2025 lens where we can get on our phone and ask ChatGPT these questions and get on a TV and get on Instagram and make comments and have opinions about shit that don't even matter. And tear each other down about shit that don't even matter. And you can say, oh, Chap, you trying to be like Martin Luther King. No, I am trying to be Wall Street Travel. What I am saying is we make a lot of opinions about shit that we privileged for. We don't even get to do this if they don't struggle the way they struggle. We don't get to do this if people in our ancestors don't get sprayed down by goddamn hose pipes and bitten by dogs and all this. You saying what you would have did when right now, you ain't doing shit now. And I'm saying that as a whole. I'm saying that as a whole. So we can't be saying what we wouldn't have did. It took a hell of a fight, and that's why I always honor. And I fix my mouth before I even say what I wouldn't have done back then. Because I can't speak to what I would have done in the 60s with my 2025 or my 1982 born ass. But I do know this, and I can tell you this. I always tell myself, or if there's any kind of way that I could go back to the future, I would love to be born in the 60s and the 70s. Just to experience that type of togetherness, that type of, I think that's when we was the most powerful. Because we had people of our culture, of our era that really stood up and understood what it's like to fight for us, man. So I never take that for granted. And I think that's one of the biggest things that these next generations are going to fall short on. I think that's one of the biggest things that they're going to fall short on is because, and I'm speaking for myself as a whole, there's not enough of us that's willing to stand in the paint like that. I'm not discluding myself. I remember I told Jose, like, dog, I'm willing to die for this shit, dog. Because I faced that in so many different ways, but at the same time, somebody can even look at me and say, Trap, how can you say you for the people? You telling people go invest in the stock market? That's capitalism. You should be trying to preach socialism. How can you love Fred Hampton? He was about socialism. He wasn't about capitalism, Trap. That's an argument. In my mind, I'm like, bro, like, this how we get out of there. In my mind, we use the market to get where we got to go at, but at the same time, you feeding the same system that did what? Put us in the hole. So I'm not even mad at that argument if somebody was to tell me that. You feel me? That's understanding. Like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no pushback. I can only just try to give my idea of why I say let's go to the market. Like, I feel like we could go to the market, bro, because that's where we get money from, bro. We take the money from the market, bro. We build businesses. We take money from the market. We buy stuff. But if you say Trap, but you feeding the capitalism, you feeding the same thing, I would be like, bro, you are absolutely right, bro. And I got to find another way. Right? So I wouldn't be mad at you if that became the thing. But I also understand, bro, like, we cannot disregard the people, bro, that really gave their life, bro. We cannot do that.